We've added a huge amount of inventory and stock related functionality to the new version of JobPro. For example, you can track stock at multiple locations. So we can go into a new locations module, create as many locations as you like. A location can be specifically set up for sell usage, like storing stock, for internal usage, and for rental usage as well. So any of these types of areas will store stock, but just for different usage. And you can do transfers between locations, obviously. There's also the ability to tie a default location in and a default location out to each user's identity in the system. So receiving, assembling, and shipping goods or any other stock related movements are streamlined based on the user, customer, or supplier's default location. There's also the ability to track products and assets by serial number. So let's take a look at one of those. If we go into products, and here we are looking at a product, and we specified that we track this by stock first of all, but we also track it individually using serial numbers. So what happens then is that every time we either increase or reduce this item in or out of stock, it prompts us to either specify the serial numbers if we're increasing the stock, or to specify what serial numbers we're using up if we're reducing stock. And there's obviously multiple places that you can increase or reduce stock from, like receiving on a PO, assembling goods, or just putting in opening balances in your stock as well. And then reduction of goods will happen from areas like shipping goods on sales, using items for assembly, and maybe just items that have gone missing during stock takes and things like that. So being able to track units or items individually means then that we can deal with assets, whether those assets are for internal use within a company or use on jobs, or they could also be customer assets. So if we sell something to a customer that's tracked by serial number, we can then use the functionality in JobPro to book that in for maybe a job, to do a maintenance job or a service job on that particular asset for the customer. Or we can also book in particular assets for job use, so treating them like resources on a job, just like you can use a contact as a resource on a job as well. So any items that are tracked by serial numbers that are linked to products, they will appear in the units module. So for example, we're looking at a product here, and we can view the units or serial numbers for this item. We can see there's 5 items. They're all currently in a location called main stock location, and we can see the serial numbers, and we can view those by clicking on an arrow beside one, and we're then brought into the units module where we can see for this specific item that it was added in as an amendment, like an opening balance on a particular product record. Usually though, an item would be introduced into the system on a purchase order or something like that, and then you'd see that it was sold or used on a job. And also for a particular unit or asset, you can see where it might have been used on bookings, like on a job or on a task. And you can also, from a unit or an asset record, you can create a booking. So another new feature relating to stock and inventory is the ability to track batches. So if, for example, we're receiving goods on a purchase order and they're tracked by serial numbers, we can assign a batch to those serial numbers, and we can see then on a batch what's been sold, what's been originally came in, and what the balance is. There's a separate video tutorial in relation to batches as well. We've added a new minimum order quantity functionality to the products module. So let's have a quick look at that. So for a particular product, if we click on the purchasing tab, we can enter in different suppliers for this item, but we can also specify what the minimum order quantity is here. So creating a purchase order relating to a product, there's various criteria that might set the quantity on that PO. Like based on the supplier, it might put in the minimum order quantity, or it might be based on the minimum stock quantity that you want, or the max stock quantity, or the actual reorder quantity that you would normally do for that particular item. So there's lots of new functionality relating to purchasing that we've added into the new version. There's also an improved costings tab. So the costings tab is where you can specify what makes up a finished product, like a bill of materials. We can now have the ability to see where a raw material or a component or sub-assembly is used to make up a finished product. Previously, we just had the ability to specify for a finished product what makes up that finished product. We've also added new fields to specify manufacturer details, like the manufacturer's part number and model number. Another new field introduced is a product description. So now what used to be called the product description is now called the product name, and there's a separate description field where you can put in like a paragraph or a longer description relating to that product. And you also have the ability in setup to specify in areas like doing a quote or a purchase order or a shipping record or a sales invoice or a sales order to include the bigger product description at the line item level of that transaction instead of just including the product name on the transaction. Also, product names do not have to be unique anymore. There's a new stock sync option in the products module that allows you to check if any stock quantities have become out of sync with actual data in the system, with an option to resync quantities if relevant. So those options are on the options tab here under stock sync related. Although rare that it can happen, stock quantities can become out of sync with actual data in the system if, for example, a record was locked or in use in the products module when the system was attempting to update the quantity in stock for a particular item. So this gives the user the ability to sync records back without needing any technical support or help from the developers. The pricing tab is now called the products tab in companies and contacts, so that a customer's assets can be listed on the screen, and from there service or maintenance jobs can be created if needed. So let's take a look at that. If we go into companies, click on products, and we'll search on customers. And for example, in here we've got a customer and they've got lots of different assets linked to them in the system, tracked by serial number. So most likely products that were sold to them. And in here we can create a job record, like a job maintenance or a service job linked to an asset or a piece of equipment that was sold to that customer. So all in all, in the new version, we've packed in a lot of functionality relating to tracking stock across multiple locations by serial number, by batches. Purchasing has been greatly improved, and various other functionality that you might notice if you're familiar with the previous versions.